Revenge with Karen.
I knew I was the ghost in the machine the day the intern asked me where the server room was. The same server room I designed. The same Gotham codebase I wrote while surviving on coffee grounds and expired ramen during those first 2 product sprints when the startup barely had a C, let alone a QA team. 5 years in, and I was still being asked if I was with the temp agency. If bitterness were a data stream, I could have DDoS'd the entire board. Called the product Helix, fancy name, sure. Sounds like something sleek and futuristic, right? But it started as Marissa V2 test Final Reel 3. Pi on my old laptop, back when the backend was still duct tape and tears. They only noticed it when it stopped crashing. Suddenly, the CTO was quoting our advanced neural compliance solution like he'd personally birthed it through a Zoom call with Jesus. He couldn't debug a toaster, but he could sure take a bow. I didn't start out bitter, not even close. I was the kind of idiot who brought brownies to all-hands meetings, stayed late to help junior devs rewrite their logic loops, took every 7 a.m. meeting with the offshore team like it was my civic duty. I believed in the mission, the people, the dream. Back then, the CEO, let's call him Bryce, used to say things like, "You're my secret weapon, Marissa." Promised partner track once we secured Series B. Said I'd be at the table when we scaled. Said it often. Said it with that smooth, empty sincerity men like him keep in their back pockets, right next to their pre-written exit emails. By year 3, I had built out the entire AI framework that made Helix a legal tech darling. Our first big client, $20M in compliance contracts, came because of that system. And yet, when the press release hit, my name was nowhere. Just Bryce, the CTO, and a weird quote from the COO about strategic synergies. I emailed Bryce just once about the omission. He replied, "Marketing made the call. Hope you understand." Oh, I did. I understood so well I started a folder that day. Just in case, I named it. In it went every Git log, every annotated spec, every email where they thanked me for building the system. Because I know how men like Bryce operate, I made sure to keep every legal document, draft submission, and IP registration form I ever touched, especially anything tied to the awards. You want to know the real kicker? The Helix patent. It lists 4 inventors. 3 of them haven't written a line of code since MySpace was a thing. The 4th, me. But only after I reminded legal that I was the one who submitted the provisional. Felt like begging for a receipt after buying the company dinner. So yeah, I smiled when they left me off another deck. I nodded when they forgot to loop me in on client calls. I played the part. The quiet, compliant coder. The one who knew where the bodies were buried, because I buried half of them myself under layers of abstraction and encrypted audit logs. You ever hear your CEO laugh about you behind your back? I have, but I'll save that for later. Hey, real quick, if you've made it this far and you're not subscribed yet, do me a solid. Hit that subscribe button and give this story a like. Seriously, 95% of folks forget, and it means a ton to the team. Plus, I promise it gets so much juicier from here. Anyway, by year 5, I wasn't expecting a seat at the table. I was the table. They just didn't know it yet. But they would. Oh, they would. They announced it during a company-wide Zoom I wasn't invited to. I found out we'd won the National AI Innovation Award when my intern forwarded me a Slack emoji reaction to the CEO's victory lap. Bryce crushed it. Someone commented. Crushed what exactly? His 4th gin and tonic. His assistant's sense of personal space. My soul? The award was a big deal, like nationally televised, investor bait, keynote panel type big. It was for Helix's breakthrough in regulatory compliance AI. The citation included phrases like unprecedented architecture, machine-verified audit flow, and disruption of legacy frameworks. Which is funny, considering those were all my phrases, lifted verbatim from my original white paper. Right down to the Oxford comma. The official press release hit the company Slack like a champagne cork. Everyone was tagged, everyone except me. The CEO, Bryce, in his $1,000 haircut and off-the-rack soul, gave an interview. This award is a testament to our visionary leadership and tireless innovation. And of course, we thank our brilliant development team. That was it, our development team. Like we were some undifferentiated blob of code monkeys summoned via Slackbot. I was sitting in the server room when I read it, eating stale vending machine pretzels and updating our legacy audit parser by hand, because the CTO insisted we didn't need Python 3 yet. I stared at the screen so long my eyes stopped blinking. But I didn't scream. I didn't text a single person. I just highlighted the entire press release in yellow and added it to my just-in-case folder. That Friday, they threw an impromptu celebration on the rooftop patio. Warm beer, bad cover band, some guy from sales wearing a novelty crown and calling himself the Helix King. You'd think we cured cancer. I showed up late, wore sunglasses, didn't say a word. That's when I heard it. Bryce was holding court by the grill, flipping burgers like he was grilling up leadership. A board member, Tom, I think, asked him something about the award submission. Bryce laughed, loud and sharp. She really thinks her code won us that award. My ears went hot. I felt the air slip out of me like someone popped my lung with a cocktail straw. He wasn't even trying to be quiet. He said it like I wasn't there, like I never was. The board guy chuckled. Well, she's got spirit. Sure, Bryce smirked. But this was always going to be about vision, not code, and that was it. I didn't throw a drink. I didn't storm the grill and slap him with a spatula. I just walked, quietly, past the HR manager who once called me sweet but intense, past the product lead who copied my framework diagrams and then pitched them at a leadership summit in Dallas like they were his own, down 3 flights of stairs, into the office, unlocked the digital wall display in the main lobby, the one cycling through headshots of Team Helix. Mine was third from the end, smiling, hopeful, wearing a blazer I now associated with failure. I deleted it. No confirmation prompt, no are you sure, just gone. Then I locked the screen, walked out, and didn't say goodbye. Not that anyone would have noticed. That night, I added 2 new files to the folder. Award submission final PDF with my metadata intact. Zoom transcript internal award meeting VTT, auto-captioned, but accurate enough. And just like that, something inside me stopped asking for credit. It started asking for leverage. After that rooftop laugh track masquerading as a party, I went into silent mode. No more Slack brainstorms. No more quick ideas on whiteboards while marketing folks played ping pong nearby like toddlers hopped up on La Croix. No more what if feature pitches handed off to managers who'd paste their names on top and call it vision. I became corporate wallpaper, still in the room, still humming quietly in the background, but never noticed until you tried to remove me and the paint came off with it. They didn't even realize I was retreating. Bryce stopped CCing me on investor decks. Fine. I downloaded every single one from the shared drive anyway. It a subfolder, Narrative Drift V1 to V17. Tracked every revision, every slide that morphed from Marissa's compliance engine to Bryce's data governance vision. The audits. I stopped flagging minor risks. Let him build up like mold under drywall. Nothing legally actionable. Just enough to show how dependent the system was on someone who actually knew what it did. I started exporting my dev logs weekly, encrypted, and saved to 2 different drives, one physical, one in a cloud account under my college roommate's name. Then I made backups of those backups, labeled innocuously. Grandma Photos 2021, zip, no one was looking. No one ever does until it's too late. Meanwhile, I began ghosting my way out of the day-to-day. They moved me off the Helix pitch team and into technical support for future innovations. Translation, the basement of irrelevance. I smiled, nodded, took the windowless cubicle like it was beachfront property. And while they spun up new vanity features, Smart Contracts 2.0, AI-driven ethics, whatever the hell that means, I cleaned house. Dependencies mapped. Authorship logs cataloged. Emails with legal about award rules printed and stashed. I even had the original invoice from the certification vendor who processed our award application, signed by me, timestamped. The title primary architect right there on the line item. Bryce was busy doing press. Our CTO was busy plagiarizing Medium articles. I was busy knitting the noose they wouldn't see coming. One afternoon, as I was quietly labeling files like a cheerful little forensic librarian, someone knocked on the side of my cube. Derek, sweet, nervous Derek from engineering. One of the few good eggs. He glanced around like he was about to pass me state secrets. Hey, he said, I heard from Sahana in finance. There's restructuring talk. You didn't hear it from me, I blinked. They planning layoffs? He nodded, or reorg. Big investor push coming. They're making it lean. I don't think your name's on the chopping block. I'm not worried, I said, and I wasn't. He hesitated. You doing okay? I smiled. Better than you think. Then I leaned in, lowered my voice, and asked one thing. Let me know when the legal team schedules their review of the award documents. He furrowed his brow. For the investor deal? Exactly. Derek nodded slowly. He didn't ask why. Smart man. I went back to work like nothing had happened, like I wasn't already halfway out the door, with every blueprint, signature, and clause they forgot I ever touched neatly folded into my invisible arsenal. At this point, it wasn't about credit or vindication. It was about watching them realize, far, far too late, just how much of their empire was built on the back of someone they treated like a chair with opinions. And the best part, the chair was getting ready to pull itself out. They started calling it the big one, the investor deal, I mean. $400 million. Enough to scale globally, rebrand the company. Finally, buy Bryce that third vacation home he liked to humble brag about, just a rustic little chalet in Aspen. The energy in the office shifted overnight. Open plan chaos turned into shark smile politicking. Suddenly, everyone had an opinion. Everyone was a strategic thinker, and the espresso machine got serviced for the first time in 2 years. Me. I got demoted to ghost status with flair. Found out about the final strategy sessions from a shared calendar. Invite I wasn't on. Apparently, they were happening in the Innovation War Room, which was just the rebranded conference room with the broken HDMI port and a new coat of whiteboard paint. Only leadership and key narrative contributors were allowed. When I asked, casually, politely, if I should be looped in, Bryce waved me off with a smile. We need you focused on stability tasks, Marissa. Steel's too high level for deep technical dives. Don't worry, we'll definitely credit your groundwork. Groundwork, he said, like I laid mulch, not wrote the framework that got us here in the first place. I nodded, of course, happy to help from the sidelines. I made myself so small they thought I disappeared, but I was very much there. Derek fed me details, the meeting notes, the early slide decks, the whiteboard snapshots. One of the product managers accidentally uploaded a full demo script to the internal knowledge base without restricting permissions. I read every word. They were selling my architecture like it was a new perfume. Helix, compliance you can smell. Bryce was everywhere, front of the deck, front of the story, front of the staged group photo they took in the glass stairwell. I wasn't in the shot. I was the code running silently behind the camera. Elevator they rode up without noticing the cables holding it. They called the core of the system Helix ML, pretending it was some kind of machine learning oracle summoned from the ether. In reality, it was 3 years of version control hell, custom rule interpreters, and a compromise I made with legal over GDPR triggers that still gives me hives. They paraded it around like it had arrived in a golden egg from Bryce's forehead. And yet, in every deck, every roadmap, every glossy investor brief, they missed one thing: consent mechanism for external capital triggers tied to IP origins. Why? Because I was the only one who knew it existed. Back when we submitted for the award, the one they keep parading like a prized pig, I had pushed for a clause that would bind any commercial use of the submission materials to a formal acknowledgement by the primary architect. Me. At the time, I did it to keep legal honest. Never thought I'd actually use it, until I saw them trying to spin gold from my silence. I printed out the latest deck, read it over lunch in the empty server room. The part that broke me, the vision and execution timeline slide. Bryce's initials were next to every milestone, every single one, even the pilot audit that crashed 3 times until I rewrote the cache logic in an Arby's parking lot during a snowstorm. But I didn't cry or scream. Break things, I smiled, because I knew something they didn't. They could paint the walls however they wanted, rebrand the truth, rehearse the lies, sell themselves as the heroes of a journey they barely survived. But the foundation, the code, the proof, that still belonged to me. And when the time came, I'd let it all speak, loudly, legally, and with the kind of precision only a woman in tech could weaponize after 5 years of being called too technical. I took a personal day. Told HR I needed time for mental wellness, which was code for, I'm going to pull the pin on this grenade you idiots built a throne on. Slipped out before anyone could rope me into another mandatory team-building Slack thread about gratitude journaling. Drove 2 hours in silence with only the whir of the heater and my own pulse for company, straight to the beige downtown building, where the National Tech Innovation Committee kept its records like relics in a tomb. I wore jeans and a hoodie, no badge, no hint of the storm I was about to uncork. The woman at the front desk barely looked up when I asked for the award submission file from 5 months ago. Company name, Helix Systems, Inc., form of identification. I handed over my license and the committee access code I had personally registered during the submission window. She typed something, frowned slightly, then clicked her tongue and stood up. 10 minutes later, he returned with a binder. No PDF, no email link, an honest-to-God binder. Heavy, smelled like toner and karmic retribution. Need a copier? Just a minute. I opened it with the same care you reserve for old photographs or unmarked explosives. It was all there, every form, every formality, every justification for why Helix deserved the award. Architecture diagrams, test suite summaries, flowcharts I bled out over at 3 a.m. between bug patches. But then, on page 7, my heartbeat hit a different rhythm. Primary architect Marissa Lane, clear as daylight, not team member, not lead contributor, primary architect. I remembered the fight I'd had with legal to include that line, how they grumbled about formatting and space. I didn't budge. They didn't care enough to push back. And now, that line was the tripwire. I flipped to the last section, licensing and eligibility disclosures. And there it was, a clause so boring no executive ever reads it. Paragraph 4.3, subsection C, any future commercial investment, acquisition, or integration that explicitly references this award or relies on the intellectual property submitted herein shall require formal written consent from the named primary architect prior to execution. Translation: if they wanted to use my work to close this $400M deal, they needed my signature. Not a nod from Bryce, not a wave from legal. Mine. I smiled. I copied the entire file. Twice. Paid for certified mail to 2 addresses, one to my apartment, the other to a P.O. box I hadn't touched in 3 years. On the return drive, I stopped at a diner off Route 7. Ordered pancakes. Poured syrup with the same calm I imagined wielding in a courtroom. Back at my apartment, I placed the binder on my kitchen table like it was radioactive. Sat across from it. Studied it like a bomb technician. All those years I'd wasted asking for credit. Now, credit was irrelevant. I had the controls. They could charm investors, polish pitch decks, fake competence in 5 different fonts, but without this signature, they were pitching smoke. I didn't need to raise my voice. I had something better, paperwork, legally binding. Boring, bulletproof, beautiful paperwork. The kind that doesn't shout. It stops the room. The night before the deal felt like the dress rehearsal for someone else's wedding, a party I'd planned, paid for, and decorated, only to be told I'd be working valet out back. They booked out the top floor of a rooftop steakhouse, reserved just for select stakeholders and strategic leads, which was code for everyone who liked the sound of their own voice. I wasn't invited, of course. Derek was, and Derek, good man that he is, FaceTimed me by accident while reaching for breadstick. Oops, he said with a smirk. Oops, I echoed, already screen recording. Bryce was holding court again, drink in hand, shirt unbuttoned 1 notch too far like he thought that made him visionary instead of just moist. A few VCs were present, fake laughing into their whiskey. The CTO nodded so hard at every word Bryce said I was worried his neck would snap. Bryce raised his glass and everyone quieted down. I just want to say, he began, slurring around his own self-importance, this company is finally about to cash in. 5 years, blood, sweat, and he paused for dramatic effect strategy. We built this from nothing. Laughter, toasts, applause. Nothing, he said again, more softly, like he was giving the eulogy for his humility. I ended the recording. The room I sat in, my apartment, small, quiet, lamp in the window, felt a universe away from that steakhouse and the smell of overpriced ribeye. I didn't feel sad. I didn't even feel angry. What I felt was surgical. I opened my laptop, logged into the award portal using my credentials, still valid, still active, downloaded the PDF again, just to be sure. Then I opened a new email and typed with the slow, steady calm of someone loading a single bullet. Subject, compliance verification, award-linked IP authorization to legal investor at com CC, myself body. In advance of tomorrow's signing for the Series D agreement, please ensure all required signatures tied to prior award submission terms are present and up to date. Specifically, those concerning the designated primary architect, as listed in the NTIC award documentation for Helix Systems, Inc., submission ID #143B. Please refer to paragraph 4.3c of the licensing eligibility terms. Best regards, Marissa Lane, primary architect, Helix Framework. I didn't bold anything, didn't explain, didn't ask. I just dropped the match into the kindling and clicked send. No one at Helix noticed. Not marketing, not the CTO, not Bryce, not even Derek. Texted me a gif of a champagne bottle popping 20 minutes later with the caption, "It's happening." But someone did notice. 32 minutes after I sent that email, I received a read receipt. 12 minutes after that, a follow-up message from an address I didn't recognize. Thank you for the clarification. We are reviewing the documentation tonight. GD. Legal counsel, that was it. No exclamation points. No emojis. Just professional curiosity with a scent of urgency beneath it. I leaned back in my chair and exhaled slowly. They were reading the binder. They were seeing what I saw. They were beginning to understand that this $400 million rocket ship had no launch key without me. The house I built, the one they looted, renamed, and wallpapered with press clippings, had a deed. And it had my name on it. I closed my laptop, brushed my teeth, fed the cat. Tomorrow, wouldn't be asking to be in the room. Tomorrow, I was the room. The boardroom looked like money had grown legs and taken a seat. Glass walls, panoramic skyline view, bottles of still and sparkling water lined up like obedient soldiers. Everyone wore navy or gray except Bryce, who showed up in a cream blazer like he thought he was starring in a tech startup biopic no one asked for. He was in rare form, grinning wide, tossing out jokes like sugar packets, pretending the signing of a $400 million investment deal was just another Friday. The CFO nodded like a bobblehead. The CTO smirked at jokes that didn't land. One of the junior associates actually brought a fidget spinner. It whirred like a warning. I sat at the far end of the table, not a guest, not a co-lead, just there, legally necessary but visually excluded. My chair didn't even match the others. Bryce never looked at me, hadn't looked at me in weeks. The investors' team arrived precisely on time, 3 suits, 1 general counsel, and a younger associate with eyebrows permanently arched in suspicion. They shook hands, exchanged cards. Small talk floated in the air like lint. The binder came out 10 minutes in. Thick, tabbed, too heavy to be ceremonial. The lawyer, mid-50s, Harvard face but Brooklyn posture, cleared his throat. We're aligned on most deal points, he said calmly, flipping to a tab near the back. Just one last item before we sign. This pertains to the intellectual property disclosure surrounding Helix's core architecture. Bryce's smile twitched. Of course, he said, all clean. Our team built the whole thing in-house. The lawyer didn't smile. This award submission from the National Tech Innovation Committee is listed as a key value point in your valuation narrative. Is that correct? Yes, Bryce said. That win put us on the map. Excellent, lawyer replied. He flipped to another page. We reviewed the licensing clauses. The documentation requires a final signature from the designated primary architect to authorize any tied investment use of the IP. Silence. Bryce blinked. I'm sorry, the what? The primary architect, the lawyer repeated. It's in paragraph 4.3c, non-transferable consent. He looked around the room, so we just need that sign-off. Bryce chuckled. Right, I mean, probably our CTO or product lead? The lawyer tilted his head. No, it's listed by name. He flipped the binder around, a single page blown up highlighted. Primary architect Marissa Lane. Bryce's mouth opened, then closed. Then opened again, slower this time, like a fish trying to explain away a polluted river. Wait, what? I didn't stand. Didn't clear my throat. Didn't ask for permission. I simply slid my own binder across the polished table like it was nothing more than a casual lunch order. The lawyer turned to it, opened it, scanned. Then he looked up, straight at me. And for the first time since this entire circus began, every eye in that high-rise boardroom followed, toward me. I folded my hands on the table, met his gaze. Calm, controlled, not smug. This wasn't gloating. It was gravity reasserting itself. The lawyer nodded once, looked back at Bryce. We can't proceed without her. You could hear the silence settle like dust. The kind that doesn't move. The kind that knows it's unwelcome but dares you to sweep it. The investor's lawyer placed his pen down. Not slammed, not flung, placed, with a finality that only billion-dollar attorneys know how to wield. One soft sound, but it echoed through that glass and steel boardroom like a gunshot. We can't move forward, he said quietly, eyes still on me, till Miss Lane signs. He didn't say it dramatically. He said it like a fact, like gravity. Clause 4.3c requires her consent. It's non-transferable, no exceptions. The junior investor, slick hair, crisp lapels, suddenly stopped scrolling on his phone. CFO gulped like he'd swallowed a stapler. The CTO's lips parted slightly as if trying to summon a word, then closed again when he realized he had none. Just a whimper trapped in a suit. Bryce looked like a man trying to remember if he'd left the oven on in 2019. Pale, blank, fingers twitching around a Mont Blanc pen he hadn't earned. But he gestured in my direction without finishing the sentence. I mean, Marissa's not part of. She's not even on the signature schedule. The lawyer didn't flinch. Your documentation says otherwise. Your submission says otherwise. Your pitch says otherwise. Then he flipped a tab, held it up. Investor Slide 12, award-winning AI architecture. Direct quote, the engine of our innovation. That architecture is legally tied to her name. Without her authorization, the award becomes ineligible. The award becomes void. The deal subsequently becomes misrepresented. He paused. Let it all settle, so again, we cannot proceed. All eyes turned to me. I didn't rush. I didn't stutter. I let them sit in the mess they made, paper-thin egos now soaked in panic. Bryce opened his mouth to speak. I lifted my hand, not a dramatic wave, just a small surgical interruption, enough to sever him mid-sentence without saying a word. We can talk terms, I said, voice even, deliberate, but not with him. My eyes didn't leave the investor's lawyer. If this deal is to go through, it needs clean hands and clean leadership. You could feel the tension twist across the room. Even the fidget spinner stopped. The lawyer gave a half nod. Reading between lines, only people like us were trained to see. Power had shifted. The axis had tilted. Bryce was no longer the sun, just a spent match looking for another box to strike against. I believe, the lawyer said, slowly turning to his team, we may need to reconvene separately, just to clarify authorizations and structure. Possibly personnel. Translation, get him out or this deal dies. Bryce looked around, seeking rescue. From the CTO, suddenly found his own tie fascinating. From the CFO, who had gone translucent. From the junior associate, who stared at his coffee like it held the answer. But they all knew the room didn't revolve around him anymore. It revolved around me. Not because I screamed, not because I begged, but because I built what they took for granted. And now I held the receipt. The pen they tried to hand to Bryce, it never reached him. It floated midair, waiting for me. Bryce tried to recover, but the air had already turned on him. He started rambling, half-formed legal gibberish spliced with boardroom buzzwords like he could pivot his way out of a blood oath. Maybe there's a way to amend the documents, he offered, voice high and thin. Like, refile with a supplemental declaration or something, some kind of post-signature authorization. The investor's lawyer didn't even look up from his binder. That, he said flatly, void the award eligibility, which would materially alter your valuation, which would derail this deal. It was the corporate equivalent of a guillotine. No drama, just a clean drop. Bryce fell back into his chair, quiet now. No more toasts, no more grins, just a man realizing the company he thought he led was built on scaffolding he never understood. Across the table, the lead investor finally spoke. Her voice was calm, precise, like a surgeon preparing for a necessary incision. Well then, she said, turning to her legal team, we'll need to revise the board structure immediately. This deal doesn't move forward with internal instability. Translation, Bryce was done. A formality wrapped in a power move. She looked at me. Miss Lane, will you be joining us on the oversight board? I let the silence stretch just long enough for Bryce to hear it echo. Yes, I said, but my conditions are non-negotiable. Nodded. One of the lawyers pulled out a fresh sheet of paper, an addendum. Revised oversight structure effective immediately. CEO resignation accepted. His name was crossed out with surgical finality. The pen slid across the table toward me. I read every word, I always do. Then I signed. Slowly, precisely. Like I was putting the final period at the end of a sentence he never learned to read. The air in the room shifted. Not loud. Not triumphant. Just different. Like when a storm passes, and everything is clearer because of it. The lawyers began collecting their materials. The CFO exhaled for the first time in 20 minutes. The new oversight members began introducing themselves to me, but I only half listened. My focus was on the man shrinking in his seat across from me, watching everything he'd built on lies and borrowed credit come apart, one quiet page at a time. I stood, slid the signed addendum back into the center of the table, and tucked my binder under my arm. As I turned to leave, I paused. Just for a moment. Met Bryce's eyes, he looked hollow, like someone had scooped out his legacy with a soup spoon. And then I said it, soft, clear, no venom, just truth. 5 years in the dark, no, Bryce. I just wanted you to think I was, then I walked out. No door slam, no applause, just the sound of my heels tapping across a floor that finally echoed my name. Big thanks, you legends of the old office days. Subscribe to keep the switch-flicking chaos alive. Your ex-boss is shaking in their loafers.